Aishleen, Charlotte and Katie are survivors with their brother Sheridan. They are survivors of profound sibling loss and bereavement. They were originally a family of 7, and 3 of their siblings died. Their brother Declan when he was 7, their sister Jacinta when she was 30, and their brother Fintan when he was 33. So that is a profound and incalculable loss for a close, loving family of younger and older siblings. And I don't think there is any better or more sacred example of grief as our common ground, which is the title of this section. And this is gifted to us this afternoon, and I want to thank them first for coming and sharing their experience and insights, and indeed how they cope with actually carrying such sadness around with them. I wanted to ask you, when your brother died, when Declan died when he was 7, you were all very young or a little older than him. Can you talk to me about the effect that had on you and had on your family, his death?
Yeah, so basically Declan was 6 and he was diagnosed with a brain tumour, and he was diagnosed with a brain tumour in November. He had an operation in December. He had chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and then he travelled to America as well. But he died 6 months later. He just turned 7. So within that time period, our house basically turned upside down. I was the eldest. I was 12, and yeah, everything just changed. So as Marie-Louise said, we had a really, really lovely upbringing, but overnight we were shook, and each of us acted very, very differently. With the grief of Declan, we were just devastated when he died, and some of us coped better than others.
How did your lives change after his death? Or do you remember things that happened to you after he died, or things that you had to live with in relation to the sadness? Do you remember any aspect of that?
Yeah, well, I was 3 when Declan died, and I think people would say to me, people would, like, throughout the years, people would say, how many brothers and sisters you have? And I said, well, I've lost Declan. Their response would always be, but you're too young to remember. And that had an effect on me later on in years when I was in college. In Waterford, I began to get visual hallucinations and fell into a form of psychosis. I think I was always compared to Declan, like from relation, saying, oh, you look like Declan, or you smile like Declan. So I believed, I fell into deep depression, and I believed that it was my time to go and I could replace Declan. So if I died by suicide, I would be replaced. Declan would come back to life, and my family would be all perfect.
And what happened then? I mean, did this come back just in your 20s, or did you feel that he was with you even through your early teens, and then it just manifested itself when you were a young student?
Yeah, I think it was not that we couldn't talk about him. We always talked about him, but I think it manifested when I was in college.
And in what form did it come? Did it come as voices, or?
Yeah, so it was a granddad-like figure, and he was telling me that he was a nice guy, a really nice guy, and he was telling me that if I go and I was able to see that my family sitting around the table and Declan coming back, and that I need to do this for my family, for Declan to be able to come back, I needed to do it for my family, and
And what did you do?
One of the times I tried to commit suicide was I had it planned for ages. I fell into depression and I enjoyed, I withdrew from everyone. I had a boyfriend and friends at the time, and I withdrew from everyone. I used to crave seeing this man. And we had a plan, a really good plan. And the plan was for me to, so I wrote a suicide note, and I actually, I felt like a big weight was lifted off my shoulder when I'd done that. And the plan was for me to, in order for Declan's soul to come into my body, I had to drink bleach. So I drank 2 litres of Domestos, and this was at one time, drank 2 litres of Domestos, and I overdosed on tablets and alcohol. And I remember I woke up with bright lights, and I was so happy. I woke up bright lights, and then my mother peered over me, and I was like, "You came with me? You wanted to come with me?" But then I looked around, I was actually in a hospital bed. So I was admitted to involuntary psychiatric unit for a few weeks. And I think it was, obviously the psychiatric unit helped, but I think it was actually my family coming around me and saying, "No, you're not silly, this is okay," because I felt silly speaking about it, but I really, really believed that I was going to be replacing Declan.
It's incredulous, really, because you're right when you say that you were only 3 when he died, and you were a little older, and yet this only came about again, or actually when you were in your 20s. So people presume that when you're young, you won't have the effect.
People presume that I'm resilient, and like I said at the start, "Oh sure, I don't remember him," or "Sure, I was only young, I wouldn't remember him." But in fact, I was actually went to America with him. I was in all his hospital appointments with him. So yeah, just to be aware that it can come out later on in life.
And he also died, didn't he die in the room next to you? And you remember that vividly as a child, don't you?
Yeah, so I was actually, when Declan died, it was told for me to be outside the house, so I stayed in a neighbour's house. And I remember, it was actually next door neighbour, but I remember all night saying I need to go home, crying I wanted to go home, because I was always, I don't know whether it was my parents would say, "Oh, give Declan a kiss," I always would come in and give him a kiss and look for him. And I remember the next morning, my neighbour gave me my mask clothes to put on, my mask dress, and I knew from then that Declan was gone.
So even though they might try to hide it from you in some way or protect you, you instinctively knew there was a massive change. Actually, how did it affect you? Or the family?
We actually have a photo, so probably to put a face to the name or whatever, and you can see our family unit. So that might come up in a second, but you'll see from that I was the eldest. So at that time I was 12 and the youngest was Charlotte, and in between us then there was, well, in total there was 5 children. So each of us carried on, we went to school, we did everything that we should do. But it was very, very difficult after he died. We all missed him, we all loved him, we all wanted him to be there. That's actually us there. So Declan is beside Charlotte at the front. Katie Ann is beside him with her arm on his shoulder. Fintan is the blonde, blue-eyed one at the back, and then beside Fintan on the other side is Jacinta. So that was our school photo, very normal family, very happy times at that stage. So so Fintan was the blonde-eyed, blue-eyed child there, but he really suffered instantly after Declan died. So at that stage he was 11, and he turned from being that blonde-eyed, beautiful child into something very, very dark, and he withdrew and everything. He felt that he wasn't able to save Declan. So, you know, he really suffered with his mind with that in later years. Myself and Katie Ann probably were a bit better, but then things, you know, come out later in years.
So I was 7, so I was next in line to Declan, and we were upstairs, myself and Fintan were upstairs watching Father Ted, and I was making Declan a bracelet because we knew he was going to die. When we came in from school, our mum and dad, our dad, brought us upstairs to the bedroom and said, Declan is not going to make it. He brought me and Jacinta upstairs and said Declan is going to die maybe today or tomorrow. So we knew he was going to die, and they were always very clear with us. So I was upstairs making a bracelet for him to wear in his coffin, and I just heard this wailing, like a banshee wail, and me and Vincent we could feel each other's stomach just drop, and we knew that was it. It was about 9:30 on a Friday night, and so we went downstairs, and our good friend Eamon was there, and he just put his arms around us and said, Declan has died. So I was devastated, but like kind of during that day the priest had come around and he did his communion with him. But I was in therapy a few months ago, and it actually turns out that time that he was having the communion, I stopped breathing, and I didn't realise I stopped breathing. And someone was talking about body work earlier, like breath work and stuff, and it just had a massive impact. When you do mindfulness, everyone speaks about go back to the breath, it's an anchor. For me, I could never find it. I was like, I don't have a breath, and it turns out that I stopped breathing at that minute, and I wasn't able to get back to it. So it had an impact. So everything from the day that Declan was having that communion, I would hold my breath with anything. Like, so there was any kind of panic or anything that was going on in my life, then for the next 22 years, hold the breath and forget to breathe, like literally forget. So that had an impact that I never knew until a couple of months ago. And then also, Jacinta was a louder personality than me. She was the big bubbly girl, fun. She was our fun factor. We're very, well, Charlotte's hilarious actually, but me and actually are quite serious, and we're just like mellow. Very level. So we have been level since Declan died. But with that, I've seen Jacinta's and Vincent's grief be very open and outpouring. And we didn't know it was grief at the time, it was attention seeking back then because children did not grieve. That's what we were told 22 years ago. Children are resilient, they don't grieve, they'll be okay. So with that, like speaking of Vincent and his mental health, no one knew children could get depression at the age of 12 and 23 years ago. So seeing their grief was really intense, so it made me feel like maybe I didn't love Declan as much as they did. So it got kind of complicated and I would get a bit confused. And then
it's a very interesting point because they were grieving so profoundly around you, and you might have been out playing. Was there you might have felt a guilt about that?
Complete guilt, yeah, totally. Like, I'm not grieving enough, or I didn't love him as much as they did. They were his friends, I wasn't, because they're really sad. I'm okay, but I kind of stayed okay like Aishleen because we would just kind of watch, and we were so aware of our parents, making sure that we didn't say anything to them to make them upset. So we were minding them and they were trying to mind us.
It's funny actually because Katie Ann just mentioned that she only found out a few weeks ago why she doesn't breathe in so many circumstances. And I was actually in therapy recently, and I've had a few bad therapy experiences, but this one was really good, and she literally brought me back to the room at 20 to 10, like Katie Ann said. Father Ted is on the TV, it's the outbreak, and Declan dies on the couch, and my mum is wailing, and what do I do? And I literally was like, nothing. And she was like, and how do you feel? And I was like, nothing. And she was like, and do you recognise that feeling? And I was like, oh my God, like I have literally lived my life as nothing. So Charlotte has really, really low lows. But on the other side of that, she can get really, really high highs, and she can enjoy life even though she gets really sad at times. Me, on the other hand, I've lived my life in this stable plateau of absolutely nothing, and it's a numbness, and it's a protection mechanism, and it never, ever, ever has gone away. I don't know if it will, but it hasn't gone away, and yeah, it's another protection thing, like Katie Ann said, of our parents. Like, I think watching your house turn upside down overnight and watching your parents go through this grief and knowing there's absolutely nothing that you can do to help them, there's no words, there's no comfort, nothing is going to fix this, is horrific. And I have to also say that we're very, very lucky that our parents have stayed together, that they do love each other, that we have a mother and a father in the same house, because I know there's an awful lot of children in our situation where marriages don't work out, and mothers and fathers aren't able to go to work anymore. Some mothers can't open the curtains, whereas what got us through was routine and stability. So as devastating as the consequences were with Declan's death, we still had this stable environment at home that didn't really change, and we are very aware that we think we're quite lucky in that respect, because there's many other children that don't have that.
And even though there was that stability, there was internal devastation.
Yeah,
internal devastation.
Mummy used to say that she'd get us out for school in the morning, and she'd be like, out. She'd literally shut the door at 9 o'clock, lock it, and go on the couch and cry for 6 hours, and just cry and get it all out, and then she'd pick us up at 3 o'clock. And we knew she was sad, but again, what could we do? Yeah, so.
And I'm like, guys, I didn't eat anything bad, and they're like, no, you're sad today, and it's literally all over your body, and you don't realise like what you're holding in without letting it out.
I feel that I have to go talk about Jacinta now, because they had such loss, and I don't want to leave that loss because it was so profound. But I also want to just ask you about your beautiful sister Jacinta, who mother herself,
yeah,
who died at 30, and was that really incalculable then again for you? You know, that this happened so suddenly, having lived through a whole life, right into your early 20s with the death of Declan, then your beautiful sister, just maybe when things were getting together.
Yeah, so we kind of felt like after Declan died, it was one bad thing after another. So it wasn't just Declan died. Our dad was 40 and he had a triple heart bypass, and the surgeon told him it was due to a broken heart. He had to give up work. Vinton was depressed, we lived with that. He self-harmed, tried suicide, wouldn't come home for weeks.
We've seen him living his depression every day, like we've seen it being played out. So he painted his room black, and he had self-harmed in front of us, and he decided to leave the house. He decided to make himself homeless, basically, because he wasn't able to see pictures of Declan in the house. So he used to leave, and we'd have to go around as kids. Me and Aishleen usually going out in the car trying to find him to see, was he on a park bench, or was he in a friend's house, or where was he? So
we kind of lived through that for 20 years. So we got to Christmas 2015, and we all loved Christmas, and we were like, oh my God, we all just had like an amazing Christmas this year. So we're all just going to move forward with life, and we know there's nothing we can do for Declan anymore. So let's just enjoy ourselves.
And we had so many conversations, being like, it's not going to happen again.
Yeah.
We lived in fear,
it's not.
and it was like 20 years done. It's grand. Let's hang on. Yeah.
And did Vinton, who had decided to leave the womb of the family, and you know, as you say, I think was he living in a squat at the time,
Yeah.
or do you feel he was a constant reminder then of Declan's death all the time because he was so affected by it?
It wasn't even a constant reminder, it was how do we help Fintan, how do we make him survive, how do we get him through this, which doctor can we bring him to, which specialist can we bring him to, how are we going to deal with this today. So it wasn't even like, sometimes if you didn't have time because there was so much going on within the house as a consequence of losing Declan.
Losing Declan.
Yeah.
So he comes to Christmas.
Yeah. So do you want to tell them about Christmas?
Well, we were just like really happy that like everything had gone really well. So myself and Charlotte, about the 4th of January, just after Christmas, we're not massive into God or anything, but we said we'll go to Knock because it's only 40 minutes away. And we just felt good. We were like, God has given us a good Christmas, let's go and thank him. And we said to Daddy walking out the door, what would you like us to say to God? And Daddy was like, just tell him thank you for the Christmas and may we have many more of them. Because at this time, Jacinta was great and Fintan had actually come out of where he was in his depression. He had got involved with Athlone Community Radio, where they acknowledged his incredible talents of poetry and story writing and creativity and working on radio. So he'd come out of his shell and was beginning to like himself, not love himself, we won't go that far, but he was beginning to feel he was human in some kind of way, whereas he hadn't for 20 years. So it had been lovely. And then we said we'd go to Knock, and we were in confessions. And anyway, came home, but it turns out as we were in confessions at that time with the priest, Jacinta had dropped dead with a brain aneurysm at home in the house. So Aishleen had to work on her, do CPR while she was on the phone to the ambulance guys there. So we didn't know. And we both left our phones at home, which is so unusual as well. But at the time, Aishleen was working on Jacinta, but you knew she was gone at that stage.
Yeah, so Jacinta was in her house because it was over the Christmas period and she hadn't gone home with her son to her own house yet. It was the Monday when everyone goes back to work, and I went into the bank, and Jacinta had a headache that morning, and my parents were like, oh, that's a bit unusual, we'll go down and see if she's okay. So they went down to her room and they were like, Pet, what's wrong with you? And she was like, my head is really sore, and she was crying, and they said, look, we'll bring you to the doctor and we love you. And with that she put her 2 arms out and she fell back on the bed. So when I came up the drive, my mum was outside, it had just happened, and my mum was outside screaming on the phone. So she told me to get inside. She sent that, so I ran inside, and I don't know what happens, but instinct kind of took over, and I started CPR on her. So I was doing that for about 40 minutes until the paramedics arrived, because we were in the country. And at the same time I had them on loudspeaker, and I was trying to tell them the air code of the house, and I was trying to keep her going. But I knew from her response and the lack of response that this isn't good. And the paramedics, when they arrived, first of all they were going to go by air, and then they changed their mind and they went by road and by ambulance. And I was like, oh, obviously the quickest thing to do is go by air in my head. So I thought at that stage, if they'd made the decision to go by road, the outcome wasn't going to be good. So Katie Ann and Charlotte were still in Knock with no phones, and we all had to make our way up to the hospital. And on the way up to the hospital, my mum rang and said, look, we're being called into the private room. So we waited until everyone got there. Fintan was in alone. The girls, the neighbours had got hold of them. They drove them up to the hospital, and we were told that Jacinta had a brain aneurysm, and there was nothing they could do. And by doing the CPR on her, we had kept her blood going, so her organs were okay. So they asked us at that stage, would we donate organs? And none of us in the room had any question, because Jacinta was the most giving person that you would ever meet. So we all just said, absolutely.
You speak about this with a huge maturity, about Jacinta's death. Charlotte, where were you in your head at that stage, having felt all this happiness and having come through, and the old man that was telling you what to do in the back of your head, and to donate your soul to Declan? Where were you in your head?
In my head, during Jacinta's death, I was completely open with any thoughts I had in my head. I would say it, and they would be abolished quickly. I'd say it to them, to Katie and Aishleen, Mummy, Daddy. I think with Jacinta's death, as you said, it's maturity. It was horrendous.
Yes.
But I was able to process it, yeah.
Do you think that the help you got when you were younger, when you were a young student, that really kicked in then?
Yeah, 100%. But I'm still on antidepressants, and I will for the rest of my life, I would say.
And I have to tell you now that there is a third tragedy, which was your beautiful brother Fintan.
Yeah.
After that.
Yeah.
So, Kieran, would you relate that, what happened?
So Fintan, as I said, he was really struggling since Declan died when he was 11, and he went into his own world. So he kind of took himself away from the family a little bit. He wasn't able to be with us. We didn't really get what was going on with him. We'd get angry with him. We'd just not get over it, but how can we do this and you can't? So there was all those kind of complicated emotions with him. And he just genuinely felt like he wasn't able to save Declan as his one and only brother. He should have been able. I did a project on him. This is how I know this. When I was doing social care, he allowed me to come over, and while I was doing an interview with him, and I asked him about his what happened when Declan died, and this is his words basically. But while we were doing the interview, he was drinking cans. So he turned to alcohol as a crutch from the age of 14. He used to work in the spa hotel in Leedsville, and when he would leave in the evening, he'd get a taxi up to the graveyard with some cans, and he'd read a book to Declan. He wouldn't come home, he'd stay there all night. So he was extremely in love with Declan and absolutely devastated when he died. So in 2017, it was April, and we as a family, we used to live in Leedsville, and then we moved to Roscommon, and we as a family decided, including Fintan, decided that we would bring Declan, who was buried in Leedsville, down to Jacinta, who was buried in Ballintover. So we had a whole process, and we all agreed they would like to be together, and we exhumed Declan. And we exhumed him on the 23rd of April, and we brought him down from Leedsville to Ballintover. And Mummy rang Fintan that day and said, would you like to be with us? Because we were going to follow the white coffin down. And he said, I've already watched my brother being buried once, I'm not going to watch it again. I'll come down on Friday and I'll see you. So he came down, Declan was buried, and Fintan went after that phone call and went to Lidl or Aldi or whatever and got his cans. He also didn't eat much. He wasn't a big fan of looking after himself whatsoever. If you've seen him, you would think he was homeless. So he went and got his cans, and he went back to a very squalor kind of place that he lived in Athlone, and he drank the cans. And the coroner's report, which was funny with Brian, we were listening to everything, said that it was misadventure with alcohol. So he drank too much beer in a short space of time, and he died. So the night we brought Declan home was the night that Fintan died. So we didn't know that he had died. We didn't know till 3 days later. And yeah.
Well, it's beyond language really what has happened. It's very hard to process for people in the audience to hear and to process the tragedy that has happened to you. Do you think that we pay enough attention to siblings? Because I want to ask about your mother and father, and you said earlier on, that you spent your time even as children trying to save your mum and dad or make things all right for them. Do you think that enough time was spent with you from the time of Declan's death? When you went back to school or around what was happening to you, even in preschool, even as a 4 or 5-year-old or as a 9 or 10-year-old?
We are talking about 20 years ago, so a lot has moved on since then. But personally, no, is the answer. I don't think there's enough support. I don't think there was enough support. I don't think there's enough recognition from society. So your family can be as strong as they are, but when you go back to school after burying your brother, some children are expected to sit down and do their leaving cert or their junior cert or just carry on as normal. And if in later years they start to act out, they're bold or they're looking for attention or whatever it is, when actually, not always, there is bold children, but actually there may be a lot of stuff going on there that they don't have. I don't have the words to process what's happened to our family. A 3-year-old, Charlotte, definitely did not have the words to process, but neighbours would come into our house thinking that they were doing good, and Charlotte and the children would be ushered into the other room. Oh, sorry. So our parents were very open with us, so we knew each step of the way what was going on, and I definitely think that it's great to keep the children informed, but other people think we all have the widow grievers who like to know what's going on in the house or know more than you or know more than the next person. And as a child you pick up on that and you know who's genuine and you know who's not. And when you go back into school, it's really, really tough to sit there and act like nothing's happened.
Charlotte, what do you do with the silence? What would you say to people in the audience about what gift could you give them in the sense of what advice or what education, what information, what can you tell besides the story that has come out of that? Because something has to come out of it that allows you to stand straight, and be here today, smiling and with a new baby, So what could you say to them? What do you want to say?
There's not a lot, because I suppose everyone's different. Each child is completely different, and as you can see, 7 kids, 5 surviving at the time. We all dealt with it completely differently, and we all needed different aspects. So it's very much if you do know a child that's going through a bereaved sibling, acknowledge it. Don't say, oh, you're fine, you're a child, you're okay. I would just say, really do acknowledge them, and your hands, if you're allowed to touch them, give them a hug, or just really saying, are you okay, or speaking about that child's brother or sister, being open about it. Everything here today has been speak about dying, absolutely, speak about it. When Charlotte was going through what she went through, and talked about Jacinta, and she would talk to us about what thoughts were in her head. It completely rearranged her head, and she was okay again. So it's to just acknowledge it, acknowledge them, be there for them.
I think know that it's a long road as well. So it may be the 3-year-old may look resilient, or the 7-year-old may look like they're fine playing out on their bike, or the 15-year-old, or the 25-year-old, or the 30, whatever it is. It goes on, it's forever, it doesn't go away, and we know that from Declan. And Declan's death is over 20 years ago, and it still cuts like a knife, and you still remember every little thing of that time period. So these children need a little bit of support and extra support. So if it's therapy, if it's play therapy, if it's one-to-one therapy, if it's meeting their friends, if it's singing, if it's dancing, if it's swimming, you all know your child or the neighbour's child or whoever it is. If you have someone in your GAA club, just ask them sometimes, are they okay? You're not expected to know their anniversary or the child's birthday, but there's these massive things going on in the house, behind closed doors, and it's just really, really difficult. So a little bit of acknowledgement goes a long, long way. And people are brilliant at asking, how's your mum? Daddy gets a little bit forgotten in it, and we acknowledge that and we notice that. So now, if we see a man that's grieving, we'll nearly ignore the woman and we'll go straight to the dad and say, we know you're feeling as well. So the children are like that, and the adolescents are like that.
But isn't it a little also deeper than that? Because I know that the Child Bereavement Network, who do very profound work, because with Charlotte's situation when you were younger, you needed more than just being asked are you all right. You didn't, it had such an effect that we need the bereavement networks that Reach has, and organisations such as that and Carol and all of these different organisations that really get a foothold in what the loss is.
It's about networking and talking. I don't know if there's much else you can do. The ICBN are doing a framework, which is, they asked us to review it last year, and it is amazing. So the steps, we couldn't really add anything to it. We were like, if you put this together, if you roll this out, that's what you need to do. And it's about linking education, community, and healthcare professionals, and bringing it all together. Like, no one can fix this, and we know that. But if we can all have a little bit of a helping hand in various different ways, and it's in so many different ways. So we can't sit here and tell you how to do it. Everyone needs to know how to look after themselves and what works for them, because it's all tailor-made.
I think the thing here is that I get the impression, and I've read up about you, that the grief of a child losing a sibling is so profound and has such a profound effect on the other siblings right through their lives, is what I'm hearing, because of the processing, and because not that your grief on Jacinta or Finty was equally as profound. It's not comparable. We're not in the business of comparison. But there was as children that you just carry this weight like an albatross.
I got married in February, and everyone was just so excited for me, and they were texting me and talking to me, anyone I met, and they're like, enjoy the build-up, it's the best time of your life, it's amazing, it's fantastic, wow, enjoy. I wanted to slap every single one of them, because I was like, no, this is the hardest time of my life, this is actually the worst time ever. Aishleen hated my wedding day because Jacinta wasn't there. Like, she should be up here, like on that empty chair, the blonde one. Like, she should have been she should have been in the build-up with me. But it was honestly one of the hardest times. So we carry that constantly. So even in the good times, it's always there, and it's so heavy.
I have to tell you, that's very hard to hear, because I would have presumed that would have been,
And everyone's so excited for Everly, and so am I. It's lovely. It is lovely, don't get me wrong, she's amazing, and I have another little boy, Bobby, and he is amazing. And everyone's so excited. But it's hard. It's not hard because they won't meet Bobby or Everly. It's too much emotion. Sometimes I'm scared to get so happy with this and with my amazing husband who's so supportive that I'm scared to let the nice stuff in, because the sadness just goes whoo, like that.
And what Charlotte was saying, that you carry sadness, Charlotte, far more diligently than you do any form
more
of joy.
happiness, yeah, we do carry sadness with us. than we do happiness.
And that you feel you have no right to happiness, as you were saying.
Yeah, like how dare we be happy? Yeah.
I think it's just what we're used to now. So we were so young when Declan died. It's just like your natural being is sad, and that it's harder to be happy and it's harder to get excited about things because you're absolutely terrified.
Well, you did something wonderful. You created Jacinta Smile. Wonderful title. So tell us about that. It's an organisation and it's in Roscommon, isn't it? Just tell us about it.
Yeah, we set it up in Roscommon because we were living in Roscommon at the time, and by bringing people together, it's actually a video, so we'll give you a summary of that in a second. But we have
We're just starting, and we would love for this to keep going. But thank you for saying yes to come, because we couldn't be here without you. And yeah, it says about all of me and all of us as siblings, and knowing that how hard it is, that we're not really able to concentrate on the people that we've lost, but we're concentrating on getting to know each other, building relationships, and knowing that we're not in it on our own. And recognise how difficult it is. It is going to be a very emotional thing. It's going to come up all in different ways for everybody, and like Charlotte said, we're here to support all of the children and adults.
All of those the young people taking part there, they all have siblings who they lost siblings. Is that right?
Yeah, so the premise of it is very similar to what everyone is talking about today, and it's talking, bringing people together. So we deal specifically with children and young adults who have lost a sibling, and the loss is by any means, so it's sudden, or they don't have to be involved in a hospital, or it's basically any kind of loss. So we feel that talking and being together and surrounded by like-minded people who have a feeling of understanding and empathy goes a long way. We're also very concerned about children where there may have been two children in the family and they now have become an only child. We consider ourselves extremely lucky to have each other, but there isn't other children like that, and they have very, very few people to turn to and actually really talk about how they feel. So when we bring children out on these days, we have psychologists and counsellors there, and they have said to us that within such a short period of time, like an hour, the children really open up to each other, and if you were to do that in a room, it would take weeks and months of building up for them to feel okay with talking. So it's recognition for the children that are left behind and suffering and really dealing with pain. And we also we provide loads of different things. We provide therapy, meetups, and we are linking in with Goshka as well, so that we feel that small little goals helps people and children and ourselves to move forward. So with the Goshka, if they do this, that and the other, it'll bring them forward to the next stage or something else. So
and we can find out about, you've got a website?
Yeah, Jacinta Smile on Facebook and Instagram and all that.
Can I just ask you, we're just about to go, can I ask you before we go how you are now, Charlotte? Can you tell me, I mean, in one or two sentences, all of you, how you are now? Because if ever I have met survivors, you are.
I found talking through it, like, creatively. I found talking to everyone about how I'm feeling makes me okay.
And you have to add in a little bit of romance. I mean, that's very important.
Yeah, he's a big guy, so he gives lots of cuddles and
That's good. And Gillian?
I am okay, as we said, I just had a baby, so I'm exhausted. I'm, like I said, I'm thrilled to have a beautiful little family, but I still struggle. It's not struggling every day, but here it looks hard for us, and it is hard, but there's always connection in it. There's always nodding heads.
Yes,
And there's
and
love,
empowering.
and, you know,
Yeah.
and that makes us feel okay. We've got a connection, and that makes us feel like it's okay. Other people get this, you know.
And
I am okay. I feel like I'm just waiting for my life to start, to be honest. I'm kind of, I live a lot through Katie Ann in particular. So her babies and her husband and Charlotte is getting on great now, and once Charlotte's okay, I feel okay, my mum and dad feel okay. I'm just okay.
well, I can tell you, you're going to be fine. And when I saw the red shoes, there's things in the pipeline. I have to thank, yes, before you clap, I have to just thank you very much for being here. I think it's possibly one of the most serene and open and honest moments I've had for a long time, that people would come with such profundity of truth and do it with such grace and such beauty and such a sense of that there is a tomorrow and that they survive. Yeah.